people don't understand the power of social contagion. Generally, we don't talk enough about culture and the influence of culture in our lives. Instead, we talk more about like innate characteristics of our group, or like you're born with it, right? But no, culture is so important. And a part of culture are social contagions. We've referenced this a few times. Brown University, 2-3 years ago, some researcher there did a study on a term she came up with, rapid onset gender dysphoria. So gender dysphoria is where you think you're transgender, and rapid onset, it comes quickly. So she's looking at all these girls in particular who, out of nowhere, think they're boys. And she was looking at this, and she did a study on it, and she released it, and her conclusion was that these girls have a lot of other issues, anxiety, depression, etc., eating disorders or whatever, and the contagion is the idea that switching genders is the solution, right? That's a contagious belief that once one girl thinks it in a school, then other girls start to think it, and it spreads like a virus. And it's and by the way, we referenced that study because some transgender activists said that's transphobic, and Brown University got rid of the study. She's gone now, and she got fired from the Rhode Island Health Department as well. So she's blacklisted completely because she dare say something that's against that cult. So, but it's a fascinating concept, like the idea that gender dysphoria is contagious? What? How can that be? Well, it's very similar to suicide. There's a lot of research that suicide is contagious. This is why newspapers don't mention suicide when someone commits suicide. They don't say it. And the idea is here that when suicide is glamorized, even unintentionally, more people will do it. And that sounds so crazy. What do you mean more people will commit suicide? But it seems to be true. Do you remember when Robin Williams committed suicide? It was back in 2014. It was 7 years ago. In the 4 months following his suicide, and that really, I think that was like the last big celebrity suicide, right? In the 4 months following it, there was a 10% increase in the number of suicides compared to what would be expected. That's another 2,000 people ended their life. And they could say, okay, well, over the next 4 months, we would expect 17,000 people to commit suicide just based off of averages and what happened last year and the year before. They expect 17,000. And there were 19,000 people who committed suicide. 10% jump, 2,000 more people. And it wasn't even just the number of people. It was the means of suicide. There was a 35% increase in that one particular way that Robin Williams committed suicide. Interesting. Very similar with mass shooters, right? The media glamorizes it. They may not mean to, but they do. They publish the shooter's manifesto. They make his name famous. The Rolling Stones cover is an extreme example. This is one of the Boston bombers. One of them, the dreamy one. So we have 3 social contagions: mass shootings, suicide, and gender dysphoria. We need to be careful what we incentivize and what we glamorize. We need to be careful and ask ourselves, are we incentivizing and glamorizing bad things that we don't want more of? Okay, that's the background. So what's my argument? We have a culture today that glamorizes, first, being a victim and not overcoming. We say that many times. We've always lived in a culture where you get praised for overcoming obstacles. And now we live in a culture where you're praised for quitting. And we see that all over the place. The second thing is we're glamorizing, I want to be careful. It seems like we're on a road towards glamorizing mental illness. And as a society, we need to find the right balance here. We're all about extremes in our culture right now too, which is not a great thing, right? Even with Simone Biles. Simone Biles, she's the worst person in the world. How dare she betray her country? Throw her in the brig. He says we also spread the American perspective on mental illness around the world. He calls it American-style depression. American-style depression, post-traumatic stress, and anorexia have begun to spread around the world like contagions. And the virus is us. So the argument in the book, one of his arguments in the book, is that in different places all around the world, each culture has their own manifestation of mental illness. Mental illness exists everywhere, but what it looks like is cultural. How it manifests itself is cultural. A mental illness in Southeast Asia may look different, or did look different than one in Europe versus one of some native tribe in America or whatever, right? And it also has been different over time. Mental illness looked different in the year 0, 1st century, 10th century, 1700s, and today. But now, this book's argument is, mental illness is more uniform around the world than it's ever been before. And it looks very American. Here's one of his lines. He says, a few mental illnesses identified and popularized in the United States, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, anorexia, now appear to be spreading across cultural boundaries and around the world with the speed of a contagious disease. So the point is, and this is why this Simone Biles thing matters. People say, why do you care? I don't really care about women's gymnastics, but I care about our country. And when you glamorize certain mental illnesses and when you put a medal on it, right? Like, oh, this is even better than a gold medal. You're gonna get more of it. So we need to, as a country, as a culture, figure out the right way to deal with mental illness. And don't get me wrong, please. Listen, if you're not listening to what I'm saying right now and you're gonna criticize me for not caring about mental illness, I can't deal with you. You're not listening. I'm saying we need to deal with mental illness in a healthy way, in a way that better than we have in the past. Help people work through it, but also not glamorize and celebrate it. Because if you do that, you're gonna get more of this thing that we don't want more of.
Wow, that was deep and insightful. I want more of that. Like,
Subscribe, get more.